The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Thanks for tuning in, ladies and gents. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly. This is Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. I want to thank everybody for all the love and support and encouragement sent my way after the relaunch of this podcast last week following WrestleMania. Once again, got the juices flowing, wanted to fire up the mic and talk wrestling once more, and all the positivity, all the good feedback that's been coming my way, I greatly appreciate all of it from everyone who listened and everyone who sent it in to me. As a result, look, we went out of our way. We got everything fired up. So the podcast, as of now, you can find it wherever you usually get your podcasts. So I don't know how you got this particular one, this particular episode or last episode, but right now it's a matter of convenience. So iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, however you usually get your podcasts, it's out there in the world for you to get it. So please take advantage of that convenience. Subscribe to Intelligent Wrestling Conversation, spread it amongst your friends, and hopefully we can continue moving onward and upward into the future with this particular show. Got a pretty interesting episode on tap for you right now. And as I promised you last week with the new direction of this podcast, we're not going to fall into the lazy formula of just recapping Monday Night Raw and recapping SmackDown Live and telling you what I liked and didn't like about it. You already watched those shows. You know how you felt about it. I go weigh in on bits and pieces, but I don't really find that to be an interesting show for you to listen to for a while. Later in the show, I will talk about the Superstar Shakeup. I will talk about who went where, what I liked about it, and what that might mean for those particular rosters moving ahead. Also, I got our resident wrestling guru, Tom Nix, joining me later in the program. Going to talk about some of the non-WWE wrestling events that went on over WrestleMania weekend and things that you might want to put on your radar. Once again, spicing some things up, adding some variety to your wrestling radar, to your wrestling landscape. So we got all that to look forward to as the show progresses. But where I really want to start this week is some big picture ideas talking about the culture of the WWE, or at least the culture within the WWE. And the place to start with it is the story that everyone's been talking about over the past few weeks, and that is the future or lack thereof of announcer Mauro Ranallo within the WWE. Now, the wide belief at this point in time is that Mauro Ranallo's time with the WWE is coming to an end. He will be sitting on the sidelines, he will be finishing out his contractual obligations, and then that will be the end of it. The WWE will go one way, Mauro Ranallo will go another. Maybe one day we'll get answers or a conversation from Mauro Ranallo about his time within the WWE. But for now, it's just sort of there. Both sides don't really want to talk about it. And I don't blame Mauro Ranallo at this point in time. He's just really sort of trying to see this thing through to the end. Seeing an unfortunate situation through to the end. But how we got here and why is really cause for examination and some harsh criticism of what goes on within the WWE. Now, Mauro Ranallo has publicly acknowledged and tried to deal with his own mental health issues. Bipolar, suffers from depression, things that have affected him over time that he is aware of, he tries to treat, I guess is the right word, with professional help, of course, but at least something that he is aware of. It's not something he's trying to hide. It's not something that he is afraid of talking about. This is something that he knows affects him. This is something that he is trying to bring awareness to in a number of ways with his own acknowledgement of it. And sort of removing the stigma that comes from mental health issues that are a part of people's regular lives. And so everyone has known that this is a part of who Mauro Ranallo is for quite some time. The WWE knew about this, I'm sure they did, when they hired Mauro Ranallo to be their lead announcer on SmackDown Live. And look, Mauro Ranallo, this was sort of his dream to work for the WWE. He is a diehard wrestling fan, and having built up his reputation through calling boxing, through calling MMA, to have the opportunity to call play-by-play, or whatever it is, however it is they want to acknowledge their announcers these days in sports entertainment, to have the opportunity to call professional wrestling for the WWE, right, the show, a dream come true for Mauro Ranallo. And, you know, as optimistic as we all would have been about this, because I really dug Mauro Ranallo's calls as a professional wrestling announcer. Primarily because he is not of a particular mold. He's not crafted to be a certain way. He doesn't fit a particular formula. He is who he is. He's unique. He's passionate. He's authentic. And as a result, he's very good. Because he's unlike anyone else talking about professional wrestling when he has a live mic in front of him. In that way, very much from the school of good old JR, who did things the way he thought best served his personality and his skills, and made a legendary career out of it. But let's not forget, the WWE over time soured on Jim Ross because he did not do things the way they now wanted them to be done. And with their hiring of Mauro Ranallo many, many months ago, we sort of, the writing should have been on the wall a little bit. That as much as we were enthusiastic about this very powerful voice sort of being given the opportunity to live his dream, he's not your typical WWE commentator at this point in time. And look, the WWE, Michael Cole was groomed to be the way he is now over time. You look in developmental, sort of coming up, Tom Phillips is groomed to be a certain way over time. You can take people and mold them to be what you want them to be if you get them early enough and sort of instill the direction you want them to carry out for you. Mauro Ranallo has been at this for quite some time now, though. So to have somebody who is so hardened in the way they do things, their unique voice, it's hard to break that and change it. Now, look, that doesn't mean that Mauro Ranallo is a perfect announcer. Yeah, there are obviously some things along the way that you could probably improve within him to help deliver your product better. By the same token, there are probably things that the WWE could learn from Mauro Ranallo's approach that might help enhance the way that their announcers help get the product over. It's a symbiotic relationship that could take place. But once again, let's not forget, this is the WWE we're talking about, who likes to do things a certain way. And so as a result, to bring in somebody for the reasons of you like what they do and then try to take away the very things that you hired them for, doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, I mean, that was sort of, that should have been a flag, a red flag of sorts, early on, that maybe this wasn't going to go so well. But you hope for the best. You hope that the talent is enough to sort of navigate the rocky road, and that everything will work out in the end. We hope for that with wrestlers who step in between the ropes, who may not fit a particular WWE mold or idea of what a superstar should be. You hope that the talent is enough for them to overcome the skepticism and prove the naysayers wrong. And in that very mindset, that's what we hoped for Mauro Ranallo. The problem is that Mauro Ranallo was subject to JBL, who is a more specific target to discuss in this situation, but is really a symptom of an overall larger problem within the WWE. So what winds up happening is that Mauro Ranallo misses a show due to bad weather. Or that was the word, is that he missed a show due to bad weather. And JBL, as well as some other people, Taz was out there, some other announcers were out there talking about how this was a horrible thing that Mauro Ranallo missed the show due to the weather. You know, and I to a certain degree, I can understand. People have said, well, he could have planned ahead of time. It could have been this. It could have been that. It seems like the weather was... I mean, in retrospect, the weather was sort of a cover story for why he wasn't at this show. Because the following week, he also wasn't on the air broadcasting SmackDown Live. But what we have since come to learn is that Mauro Ranallo's condition really affected him and debilitated him in a number of ways, preventing him from going out there and doing his job. Because he was the subject of bullying by JBL, his broadcast partner on SmackDown Live, which really just brought to the surface all of this mental health issue and issues that Ranallo has been dealing with for quite some time. You know, it started out with Mauro Ranallo got an award from Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer for being the best wrestling announcer, and JBL taking issue with that and tweeting about it and bitching about it on that stupid WWE Network Bring It to the Table show. And I think that was the breaking point. I'm sure that there was other underlying tension throughout this of JBL just nagging and bitching and poking and prodding and provoking. All the things that assholes do over time to try and break you. And, number one, it's unprofessional to do these things. If this is your broadcast partner, you should be trying to do everything in your power, everything possible to lift them up. They're a team. Or they're part of your team. When they do well, you do well. When you all do well, the show does well. When the show does well, the company does well, and everyone should be rooting for everyone else. That's the way it should work. But that's not the way it works in the WWE. More often than not. Because JBL, over his career, has been a guy who has gone out of his way to make the lives miserable of his coworkers. So once again, not only is it unprofessional, it's also probably illegal to create a hostile work environment for your other coworkers. And now, let's remember, this is the WWE we're talking about. This isn't the old territories from years ago where sort of anything went because it was unregulated and it wasn't really watched over and it was just this thing that happened amongst promoters in different parts of the country. Oh, no. This is a corporate brand, a global brand we are talking about, the WWE is. And as a result, being a publicly traded company, let's not forget, they have a responsibility to provide a safe work environment for those who are employees of the company, as well as, and let's remember this distinction, those who are contracted to work for the company. Because the WWE will be so quick to say, oh, no, these people aren't employees, they're, quote, independent contractors. Which is fine and dandy, except you still need to provide a safe work environment for the people you have contracted for work. That means wrestlers, that means announcers, that means referees, that means whoever it is that you are coming into agreement with for services. And this story blew up even further with the release of Justin Roberts' book. Justin Roberts, who was a ring announcer for the WWE for about 13 years before he was out of there, talked in this book about what a horrible person JBL was, to offering up a story about how his passport was once stolen from his bag on an overseas trip, and that he needed to traipse around Europe to get to the United States Embassy in London in order to get a new passport to be able to return home. Now, JBL has come out on Twitter and denied it. I didn't do that. But then John Morrison, or Johnny Mundo over in Lucha Underground, has pretty much come out and said, no, but JBL asked me and Joey Mercury to do it at the time. And once again, it goes back to this culture in the WWE. Now, once upon a time, when we were talking about the territories, people could get away with this. And, there are people who say, oh, well, it's just a rip. It's just a joke. Have a sense of humor. Lighten up. You lighten up. It's not really a joke when you can't get home because someone stole your passport. And you are sort of lost away from home in the middle of nowhere out in the world because somebody thought this was funny. It's never funny to the person who is the subject of the joke. And yeah, there is taking things too far. Hiding somebody's passport for a little while. Ha ha ha. Look, they're looking off for it. They're getting worried. Maybe you could get some laughs out of that. But this is like next level assholism. And Justin Roberts isn't the first or the last guy to talk about the behavior of JBL. And this is widespread because I know about it. You probably know about it. Lots of people know about it. People who worked for the WWE know about it. This isn't something that's a secret. Let's put it that way. This isn't something that people are like, oh, I didn't know that JBL was sort of a bully. There were stories upon stories upon stories upon stories of JBL walking around thinking he's hot shit in the WWE. And to a degree believing he's untouchable because of it. There have been instances where people have stood up for themselves. Steve Blackman, for one. Joey Styles, at one point. The Blue Meanie. These are all people who were not afraid or who reached their breaking point and reacted with rage and anger and aggression against JBL. Sometimes the only way is to make a bully stop. But the wider belief, as I said earlier, is of JBL just sort of being a symptom of this, is the tolerance for this type of behavior from the higher-ups in the WWE. Because if you think Vince McMahon does not know that this is happening, you're beyond naive. Borderline clueless at that point. Oblivious to reality, I would even say. Because JBL is sort of operating with carte blanche because he's given permission to do it from the higher ups. He's never been disciplined for this. I would even go so far as to say he's encouraged to do this. JBL himself has said it's sort of a way to weed out people who might be too soft. And that's a horrible thing. It's a horrible way to see the world, and it's a horrible way to run any sort of company. Let's not forget, this is World Wrestling Entertainment. This is an entertainment company. These are people who want to be there more often than not. Sure, have there been people along the way who may have used the WWE platform for the wrong reasons? Of course. But I would say that they are the outliers. They are the exception to the rule. The rule of people who are in the WWE are people who have dreamed of being there. People who have wanted to be professional wrestlers for as long as they can remember. And then, when they finally overcome whatever obstacles that may have been put in their way, when they have finally climbed that ladder, when they have finally come close to achieving their dream, they have to deal with all the bullshit that a prick like JBL wants to dish out to them in order to make their lives miserable. First of all, what does that say about JBL and the miserable human being that he must be? These are people that are away from their families. These are people in situations or sometimes who may not even have families. They have chosen their love of professional wrestling over anything else. And they're on the road all the time, and they're traveling all the time, and their schedules are horrible, and they put up with all of it to be able to go in between the ropes, between those four corners, and entertain fans on a regular basis. And this is the thanks that they get. Now, I'm not saying we have to kiss everybody's ass or pat them on the back all the time, but this isn't the aggravation that should come with the sacrifices they have chosen to make to chase their dream. And the fact that JBL is sort of the vehicle for this, the person to help carry it out. I mean, what does that really say about what kind of a person that is? A despicable, horrible, I'm almost at a loss for words. I mean, I could keep going actually if I really need to, but I'm trying to hold it together just a little bit. I mean, just a fucking asshole. Like, that's really the best way you can put it. But you go further up the ladder, it all rots right at the head because you know that Vince McMahon and his generals up there know that this is happening and stand by and do nothing about it. And as a publicly traded global brand, that is unspeakable. They should be protecting their workers, not harming them for some type of sick entertainment. And personally, on a personal level, as someone who has been the target of bullies in the past, as someone who has seen other people be bullied, and especially now as a part of a culture that does not tolerate this sort of thing, I hope swift action is taken. And I hope in the end Mauro Ranallo comes out of this so much better off than he started. I'm really sorry for him that this situation deteriorated to this degree. I am glad to hear that he is back on social media again. I am glad to hear he is dealing with his issues. I am glad to hear that he has been seeking his treatment. I am glad to hear he is feeling better. What really hurts me about this Mauro Ranallo thing is seeing someone's dreams crushed by stupidity. because Mauro Ranallo will never look at the world of professional wrestling the same again. And that may seem like such a small issue in the grander scheme of what everything Mauro Ranallo has been dealing with. But I guarantee you, if you had an opportunity to talk candidly with Mauro Ranallo, he would tell you, this one hurts. It hurts to meet your heroes and have them let you down. It hurts to meet those that you respect and you look up to and have them disappoint you. And it sucks that this is how it played out for him. And I really do genuinely wish him the best coming out of this situation. As for the WWE, I hope for some comeuppance on them. Because the rubber is going to have to meet the road. You know, Bill DeMott was dismissed from the company after we had similar allegations against him down in developmental. Because the WWE and all of their anti-bullying public stance with the Be a Star program look like a bunch of hypocrites for allowing JBL to run around unleashed and untamed and unchecked. When the message that they're sending to kids out there is to treat others with respect and dignity. And you got a guy running around stealing people's passports and stranding them halfway across the world. And for what? To make the boss chuckle? Ha ha ha! We got that poor bastard. It's shameful and it's disgraceful. And I don't give a shit how much money you have or how powerful you think you are with the standing of your company or your stock price. No one should treat another human being that way. And God damn it, this is a world we are moving forward and progressing and being wise to these situations and standing up against them and not tolerating them. And I would hope that we see something happen within the WWE to change this. And people are wisening up. They're smart to this. They know what's going on. There were Fire Bradshaw chants at recent live events. A fan was thrown out for holding up a JBL bullied sign for me. People are not taking this lightly. And I realize that it is just the WWE, which is this very niche, fringe sort of programming. They think that they're amazing, but there's still only a certain segment of the population that follows this. But I think that the snowball is only just beginning to roll down the hill on this. And I would advise the WWE to take swift action here to not only remove JBL from this situation permanently, but to also take necessary action to actively change their culture in the company. Because the longer they let this fester, the longer they let this sit out there, the longer they allow the opportunity for more people to be aware and stand up against this, the worse off it will be for them in the long run. I promise you that. With the way we operate now, with the way social media operates now, with the way it is so easy for information to spread to others, the WWE will be in some serious hot water if they do not address this quickly and immediately and definitively. Because otherwise, all that they are doing is enabling. And speaking of enabling, I want to touch upon one more aspect of this, and then we'll move on. But Jonathan Coachman, former WWE employee, now SportsCenter anchor over on ESPN, was sort of slammed on social media for the fact that ESPN, who until recent years had never covered professional wrestling or the WWE on a regular basis, and now does, was slammed for the fact that ESPN was not doing anything or investigating Justin Roberts' claims, the story surrounding Mauro Ranallo's mistreatment at the hands of JBL within the company, wasn't really digging into this at all, as, you know, a journalistic enterprise would. And all it really did was call into question the integrity and the reputation of ESPN and its personalities. Number one, Jonathan Coachman said, I'm not a journalist. I'm not an investigator. I'm an entertainment personality. That's specifically what he said on Twitter. Do you have any idea how poorly that undermines and undercuts anyone who works for ESPN at that point? We don't report on things. We just show highlights and make up catchphrases for them. And then dispute bullshit on our airwaves to fill up 24/7 programming. You know, it really does a disservice to those who actually are serious sports journalists who work for ESPN. Who try to learn things and uncover things and dig up things and provide knowledge to their viewing audience. It's not just about entertainment. Sports is entertainment, yes, but is there news that comes out of that world? Yes. And the coach also said, oh, we don't report on rumors. Since when? What do you call hot stove baseball reporting? What do you call your rumor mills? What do you call all the coverage leading into any sports trade deadline? It's not hard-nosed reporting because you're reporting on things that haven't happened or aren't quite true. Just things that you have heard or rumblings. All that Jonathan Coachman has done recently is proven that he is also an enabler, a shill, a puppet, a promoter. And his response is, well, I'm just not going to cover wrestling anymore. Good! Because if you're not going to cover it the right way, the good and the bad, warts and all, then get the hell out of the way for the rest of us who do love wrestling, want it to be treated with respect, and want to talk about it in an intelligent way. Let's shift gears, shall we? All right, so I said that we were going to be doing something different here on the show, and my word is my bond moving forward here on Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. So, look, we talked at length already about sort of this JBL situation, and I'm going to be getting into the Superstar Shake Up in a little bit. But right now, right here in the middle of the show, I want to go to the This Is Infamous hotline, and I want to bring in my resident wrestling guru. You can follow him on Twitter at the Tom Nix, because all he really does is talk about wrestling and watching wrestling most of the time on Twitter anyway. But this dude is sort of an encyclopedia of wrestling. He's one of my good friends here, and I want to welcome Tom Nix now onto Intelligent Wrestling Conversations. So Tom, thank you very much, man, for taking the time to be part of this week's show.
Ooh, yeah, you're welcome, Billy.
The cream of the crop.
Rising to the top. Yes.
So here's what we're going to be doing moving forward. And Tom was gracious enough to hear my pitch on this idea and be like, yeah, let's absolutely do this. And basically, Tom is here on this particular show and shows moving forward to really tell us things that we don't already know. There's a lot of focus, obviously, on this show with WWE being sort of the main wrestling company out there for us to pay attention to. We talk at times about Ring of Honor. We talk about Impact. We'll talk about New Japan sometimes, NXT, all of the sort of main names on the wrestling stage across the wrestling landscape. But there is so much wrestling that goes on beyond those big companies that sort of eventually feeds into those big companies. Where did Finn Balor come from? Where did Shinsuke Nakamura come from? Where did Kevin Owens come from? They came from somewhere. They didn't fall from the sky, I can tell you that much. So Tom is here really to sort of lay out everything else that's out there, things that you should be paying attention to, things that you want to put on your radar, things that you want to take notice of to sort of be more well-rounded wrestling fan, I guess, so to speak. So Tom was in Orlando, not with me, but he was in Orlando for WrestleMania weekend. And Tom, let's just lay it out. Let's lay out your credentials here. Let's break it down. How many WWE shows over the course of WrestleMania did you attend?
I attended one WWE event. That was WrestleMania 33.
And how many hours over the course, or let's not say how many hours, how many shows over the course of WrestleMania weekend outside of WrestleMania 33 did you attend?
From Thursday night to Sunday night, going into Monday morning, I watched 11 professional wrestling shows, 10 of which were not WWE related at all.
See, this is what I'm talking about, ladies and gents. The professor. We're just going to call you like the professor. You could be the new genius.
Some might call it madness. Ooh, yeah.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's so much wrestling out there that is not WWE, that even if you went to WrestleMania weekend and chose not to go to the Hall of Fame or NXT TakeOver or WrestleMania or even Ring of Honor Supercard, you could make up your weekend with everything else. And Tom did. So Tom, let's get into what it is that you saw.
Before we get into what I did, this was a fact that I think was thrown out on the internet a couple days before WrestleMania weekend, just by you saying like, hey, you could fill in the gaps with all this stuff. Over the course of WrestleMania weekend, the number of wrestling related shows, and that includes like Jim Ross's ringside stuff, and that includes like, superstars or like old wrestlers giving talks as well as shows. There were 96 wrestling related events over 4 days. No, sorry, 6 days. Because they're counting like the NXT tapings and SmackDown and Raw Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But just from Thursday night to Sunday, there was something like 90 events you could have gone to with your time. Like, there's that much wrestling in the world that it's almost absurd to think about how much wrestling-related content descended upon Orlando in 4 days. So me doing 10 shows is nothing compared to the content that was there.
I mean, you can't do them all. It's impossible to do them all. But you tried. You got.
I give the old college try.
Yeah, you got a pretty good percentage of it done, more than most, I would say. Like I didn't even see Tom over Orlando. Even when we were in Dallas, I only saw you in passing as you went to a No Holds Barred screening at the Alamo Draft House. But and once again, this is how lunatic Tom is. This is why he's on this show. Is that Tom was like, I have already seen Hulk Hogan fight Zeus before, but I've never seen it on the legitimate big screen, I guess. And you went to that. So
yeah. And I mean, I otherwise would have been sitting in a wrestling venue, and at least this one can serve you decent food and has air conditioning, so I'll choose that one this time.
That is true. Some of those venues are not of the best quality.
Yeah.
But they house wrestling shows, and as a result, you deal with it.
Yeah. They house wrestling shows, and as a result, Tom Nix is in the audience.
That's right. So let's break it down. Which shows did you attend over the course of WrestleMania weekend?
Okay, so I'll give you a quick rundown of my schedule, which was insane. I started out the weekend Thursday night with Evolve 80. Then I went to Joey Janela's Spring Break at midnight, which I do want to talk about because that was one of the most absurd shows I've ever seen. Starting out on Friday, I went to the very first Progress wrestling show ever to take place on American soil. Then there was Evolve 81 the next day, followed by Chikara, and then followed by Kaiju Big Battel. Saturday was, Pro Wrestling Revolver's Pancakes and Pile Drivers, where they gave out free pancakes and the wrestlers pile drove each other. Then it was Chikara again. Then I went to the Mercury Rising, the WWN Super Show, which was billed as Evolve versus Progress. And then Beyond Wrestling, a promotion out of Maryland, at midnight. And then Sunday, I attended WrestleMania 33, and then there was the quote-unquote official/unofficial, not really official at all, WrestleMania after party that was Pro Wrestling Revolver versus my hometown promotion, Wrestle Circus. So I stayed out till about 4 a.m. every single day watching wrestling. It was exhausting, but the quality of matches and the quality of stuff that I saw was some of the best I've seen as a professional wrestling fan. If you're ever going to go to a WrestleMania, make sure you go a couple days early and make sure you tune into Billy's podcast and find out which shows you need to try to attend, because there's a lot of good stuff going on that quite frankly rivals or surpasses the stuff that WrestleMania has to offer just in terms of pure match perspective.
Yeah, you're always going to find better matches, period, beyond WrestleMania. WrestleMania is the show of shows, so to speak. And as I talked about at length last week, just too goddamn long. Just too long of a show for me, personally. And look, you spent a good amount of hours watching wrestling, and I would say probably about a fourth of it was probably WrestleMania.
So I calculated it. I want to say that I saw roughly 40 hours of wrestling in about 80 total hours. And WrestleMania was 7.5.
Yeah.
8? About 7 hours of that. So yeah, like you said, like that's crazy to think about it, but like almost 1/4 of the wrestling that I watched, and I watched a lot of wrestling, was one show.
Yeah, it's too much. that was too much. So let's just get into, I guess, some of the highlights of your weekend, and much like this segment is meant to sort of showcase, is the things that we want to put on people's radar. So coming out of WrestleMania weekend, once again, outside of the WWE landscape, what for you was the best show that you were able to witness?
So it's a hard question because wrestling is everything. Wrestling is whatever you want it to be. And some of the shows that I watched were, they varied from just incredible athletic competitions to people dressed as asparagus knocking down cardboard buildings. It depends on what you're into, what you want to say the best show was.
Well, let me rephrase that. What would be the number one show that you would recommend people at least open-mindedly try to put on their radar?
So the show that I would recommend if someone is going to experience a professional wrestling, an independent professional wrestling event from that weekend, the one that I would tell you to look up is Evolve 81 from Friday. Friday, March 31st, I guess that would have been. It had top to bottom some of the absolute best matches, and it had a really, really big variation of types of matches. You had like some high flyers. You had some very technical wrestling. You had a full out crazy hardcore match for the main event. You had big dudes going after each other, and you had like really, really, really almost like shoot fighting UFC kind of like reversals and technicality on the card. It just has a wonderful mix of everything that you would probably like about wrestling. If there's one match that doesn't quite do it for you, just wait for the net match and it probably will. So I would say Evolve 81.
Well, see, and you bring up a really great point too, and this is one of the issues I always have with smart marks is that they think wrestling should only be one way, and wrestling is a circus. There's something for everybody. So if the trapeze guys don't do it for you, wait for the clowns, and if the clowns don't do it for you, wait for the guy to get shot out of the cannon or the elephant tamer, he's not there anymore. The lion tamer guy, he's still there though. But even then now the circus is going out of business. But so my metaphor is going to be ruined for millennials and stuff at some point in time. But yeah, there's always something for everyone. And even though something may not be for you, not everything is meant for you. Different things are meant for different people. So, Evolve 81, what's the main event on that card is who?
Okay, so the main event on the card is not my favorite match from the weekend, but it's absolutely bonkers, and I do think people should watch it. The main event of Evolve 81 was Darby Allin versus All Ego Ethan Page in essentially a street fight. Darby Allin is a relatively new wrestler. I want to say one of his debut matches was around last year's WrestleMania. Like he had a quote unquote tryout match for Evolve. And in the year since then, he's kind of grown into an absolutely absurd risk taker. The show previous to this, he did a Hurricane Rana with his hands handcuffed behind his back. He's crazy. And in this match, it was basically Ethan Page beating the ever-loving hell out of a guy who couldn't defend himself. Like, he's getting thrown over the top rope into the chairs. He's being thrown like a dart into the wall of the arena. He's being hit with anything you could possibly hit him with. It's a crazy hardcore match. It's not a death match kind of thing where the whole point is to make your opponent like as bloody as possible. There's definitely blood in this match, but it feels earned and it feels like it's because someone is damaged. It's not just because you paid to see someone bleed. I'm not a big deathmatch fan, but this one was a really balls to the wall, crazy hardcore match.
On top, well, what was your favorite match of that particular card then? If not the main event.
The reason I recommend Evolve 81, and there's a bunch of good matches on this card. Fred Yehi versus Matt Riddle was excellent. Drew Galloway versus Leo Rush was excellent. The main event, or sorry, not the main event. The opening contest, which a show is good if your opening contest is Zack Sabre Jr. versus Mike Elgin. But the one that really stuck out to me that absolutely blew away my expectations, even though I have seen this match before in Austin, was Keith Lee versus Donovan Dijak. You might know Donovan Dijak from Ring of Honor. You might not know Keith Lee at all. And I'm telling you right now that Keith Lee needs to be on your must-watch list, period. He is going to be one of the biggest deals in wrestling within 5 years.
All right, so sell me on Keith Lee. What does Keith Lee bring to the table that makes him have to be on my radar?
Keith Lee is a 334-pound man who can do moonsaults, topes over the top rope from a standing position without any assistance from the ropes. He has amazing power moves like power bombs and deep sixes. But more than anything, he already has a complete character. His catchphrase is "Bask in my glory," and he will tell you that the entire match. But he already has a character fully developed. He's very funny to watch. He's really good with interacting with the crowds. And one of my favorite things about independent wrestling is going to shows with Keith Lee on the card when no one else in the arena has seen him perform before. I'm lucky insofar as he's been in my home territory for several years. He's a Texas wrestler. So I've been watching Keith Lee matches since 2013, 2014, but he's just now breaking out into like the wider world of independent wrestling. And when you get when he pulls off his moonsaults, when he pulls off his over the top rope dives, when he lifts someone who's damn near 400 pounds over his head with no assistance and knocks them out with a power bomb, that audience loses their mind. And I just love being around people seeing someone as good at wrestling as Keith Lee is and making it look so simple.
See, I'm going to write it down right now. And Keith Lee. And see, and now, once again, we're broadening our horizons.
Yes.
And
so this
ahead.
match, Keith Lee versus Donovan Dijak. Donovan Dijak is almost 7 feet tall. He's also a huge guy, but they're both extremely agile and extremely quick for big guys. So this match had an amazing pace from, big, powerful guys doing power moves to them trying to one-up each other with like top rope moonsaults and somersaults and like doing the whole jumping over someone as they hit the ropes, like something you do not expect 300-pound guys to do. Like imagine a match between Kane and Baron Corbin that was as athletic as Kalisto versus Akira Tozawa. That's what you're getting with this match. Only they're both 300 pounds. They're both freaking enormous dudes. It was the false finishes near the end just kept piling on in the perfect possible way. You always thought the match was going to be over, and it never was. It was just a perfectly put together match. Like I said, I saw this exact match in Austin in October of 2016, and it was excellent because both guys are good wrestlers and they talk well and they just put on good matches. But this specific one is just a masterpiece in what people can do when they want to go out and steal the show. This match is the match that put Keith Lee on the map nationally. If you were watching that weekend and you saw this match, you wanted to book you immediately wanted to book Keith Lee in your promotion.
See, now let me ask you about not only this match, but I guess sort of Evolve in total, as well as some of the other cards that you were able to see. Because one of the gripes that I typically have sometimes with indie wrestling, and I'm painting with a broad brush here, but is the lack of legitimate selling. Guys always wanting to sort of dazzle with their moves and put on a spectacular show visually, but no emotional investment whatsoever. It's like, the Michael Bay school of wrestling. Sure. Is that something that in checking in more deeply on Evolve or Shikara that I'm going to have a problem with, or that somebody else might have a problem with?
With Evolve, absolutely not. Evolve, when it first started, and again, this would have been a while ago, they're up to their 81st pay-per-view. The 82nd one's coming next month. But when they started as a promotion that was built around legitimate combat. Like back in the beginning, this isn't the same anymore, but back in the beginning, wins and loss records actually mattered. Like if you had a higher win-loss record, you would get title shots faster. It also counted like streaks. So like even though you might not have the most victories, if you had the most victories in a row, that qualified you for a higher placement on the card and better opportunities. So like while those specific quote unquote stats based rankings are kind of out the door, they are based in an environment where it's two men or women or man versus woman sometimes are actually competing in a combat sport. So if you get pile driven through a table, you're going to be hurting. And it's not like something where you'll pop up immediately and do something crazy, or you hurt your leg and then 2 minutes later you're doing a shooting star press. Like they have ingrained in their talent that you are telling a story in this match, and that's how it's going to go. Yes, sometimes they have a bunch of high flyers, and high flyers are probably the worst at just doing whatever they want to do. But generally speaking, Evolve is going to buck that trend of being a spot fest. I definitely saw promotions this weekend that are exactly what you said, Billy. They are there to be like, okay, we're working up to this one crazy spot, and that's all that matters is this one crazy spot. The rest of the psychology doesn't really exist. It's just more of a wow, look at that, wow, look at that, wow, look at that. Okay, the end, where the Evolve shows really do tell a story of competition. So if that's what you're looking for, you want a more New Japan style American promotion. Evolve's not a bad place to start.
With Evolve, can someone jump right in? Because we're talking about Evolve 81, we're talking about Evolve 82 coming up. Can someone jump right into Evolve? Or is this one of those things where you sort of see the number and you just become overwhelmed by it, and then you just go, I don't have the time to check in on this?
Yeah, and that's a fair question. So much like any TV season, there's a main storyline. So like if you jumped in at Evolve 82, you might not fully understand the history between Ethan Page and Darby Allin, although you'll generally get caught up, and the match will still be good regardless. But the Evolve shows also just have spotlight matches through most of the card. So it's just like, hey, these two people are good, they're going to fight each other. Sometimes there's feuds that carry over, but most feuds don't last more than 2 to 3 to 4 pay-per-views. And even so, you'll probably get caught up with the ring announcers or the commentary booth kind of telling you, hey, remember when this happened at Evolve 78? Hey, remember when this happened at Evolve 80? Well, this is what's happening now. So the answer is no. You don't have to go back and watch a whole bunch of Evolve to get caught up. Like nothing in the company is like continuity based on that kind of crazy level. They normally cut their storylines off around every 2 to 3 pay-per-views. And again, that's normally just the world title scene or a really important feud. The rest of it is kind of just, we have really good wrestlers and we want to have them fight each other. So you can jump in at 82 and be fine. However, like I said, I would make sure you go back and watch 80 and 81 just because they were WrestleMania weekend and they're both really good pay-per-views. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to make your first show of Evolve 82, you'll have a good time and you won't be that confused.
All right, so see, here's the free plug. Evolve has gotten the most free plugs on this particular show than they've ever gotten on any other show. And look, it's out there. WWN Live, I believe, is where you get Evolve shows.
Not anymore. You can do that, but it kind of sucks. They only do that for backup. They've signed an agreement with FlowSlam, FlowSlam.tv. If you subscribe to FlowSlam, you will get access to Evolve, you'll get access to Shine, you'll get access to ICW, you get access to WXW. There's a whole world of independent content out there, but the WWN network, most primarily being Evolve and Shine, which is the women's division, are included with a FlowSlam.tv membership. The streaming quality is awesome, and then they go up on demand probably about an hour or two after they air live, so pretty quickly. And then Flow Slam also has a bunch of documentaries on wrestlers, and if you subscribe to Flow Slam, you also get access to all of their combat sports. So if you want to watch jiu-jitsu tournaments or taekwondo tournaments or amateur wrestling or Greco-Roman style wrestling, that comes free with your subscription as well.
Spoken like an almost paid employee of Flow Slam.
Spoiler alert, some of my best friends work for Flow Slam.
Hey, whatever, man. It is what it is. Look, before we cut you out of here, what besides the Evolve shows over WrestleMania weekend, is there anything else that stood out to you that people should absolutely try to seek out or be aware of, or sort of once again keep on their radar moving forward?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two things, and I'll keep these both brief. But like you said earlier, wrestling is whatever you want it to be. And there was a lot of great wrestling over the weekend. But like independent wrestling, as Billy brought up, is kind of like you kind of know what you're going to get. You're going to get high flying, high impact, like crazy wrestling and good wrestling. But I do want to call attention to two specific shows. One of which being Joey Janela's Spring Break, put on by Game Changer Wrestling. It was 3 hours of nonsense. The main event was Marty Jannetty versus Joey Janela with an Earl Hebner run-in. The spotlight attraction was called the quote Spring Break Clusterfuck, which was 20 people entering in a Royal Rumble style, where the only way you could be eliminated was via pinfall or death. And one of the competitors was the Invisible Man, which was wrestlers throwing themselves all over the ring. It was a blast, and I really thought it could have been absurd in a bad way, but it was absurd in the exact right way. So while it's still wrestling, it's wrestling through a lens that you don't always see, and I really, really would recommend people check it out. And then the other one
that was also the show with the Glacier Mortal Kombat battle, if I'm not mistaken.
That was the end of the Battle Royal with Ethan Page versus Glacier in a Mortal Kombat showdown where they actually played the Mortal Kombat theme, and Ethan Page did 2D jumping and 2D spin kicks.
It's entertaining. It may not be for everybody.
As wrestling to blast, it's the best thing on the earth.
Yeah.
Please watch more wrestling. So, but the other thing I want to call attention to is Kaiju Big Battle, which is something I've never seen before live, because they really only do one show a year, and that's WrestleMania weekend in America anyway. And it kind of is what it sounds. It's guys in monster costumes fighting in a ring that's surrounded by cardboard buildings. And they're like body slamming each other onto buildings and using the buildings like chairs. And it's normally a bunch of wrestlers from like Chikara, sometimes Evolve. Basically, it's a bunch of wrestlers who just want to do something silly and fun. And the announcers walk around the ring and commentate what's happening live. And the belts are made out of cardboard and foil. And it's just fun. It's ridiculous, but it's something unlike anything I've ever seen live, and it was totally captivating to be there. So if you ever get a chance to see Kaiju Big Battle live, again, they'll definitely come back in New Orleans of next year. But if you find some old DVDs or you happen to see them touring wherever you live in the world, please give it a chance, because it's people doing something legitimately different with the art form of professional wrestling.
So there you go, ladies and gents. That's your homework for this week. Evolve, 80 and 81, Kaiju Big Battle, Joey Janela's Spring Break. Add them to your list, put them in your queue, and absorb some additional wrestling. I know there's a lot of wrestling product out there. There's a lot of wrestling programming that we try to get through on a weekly basis. But you don't have to watch it all at once. But these are some shows, just add them there. And as you get some time, check them out.
Yeah, and quite frankly, guys, if you don't have that much time to watch these shows, and I hope you do, at least check out Keith Lee versus Donovan Dijak from Evolve 81. Check out that Spring Break Battle Royal from Joey Janela's event, and just pick a random match off Kaiju Big Battle. It doesn't matter which one you watch. They're all the same ridiculousness. So just pick a match, watch a match. It'll basically take you about an hour to an hour and a half to watch all three of those featured segments, because the Battle Royal is a little long, but it'll give you something to whet your appetite for when you're ready to take the plunge and watch a whole show.
That's why Tom Nix is here. Follow him on Twitter at the Tom Nix, our resident wrestling guru.
Nix.
Yeah, Nix. Our resident wrestling guru, the Mad Professor, Tom Nix. Thank you very much, dude. I appreciate it.
Ooh, yeah. See you next time.
Okay, let's talk about one more thing before we get out of here for the show, and that is dealing with this superstar shakeup that took place on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live this week. Some talent going from SmackDown to Raw, some talent going from Raw to SmackDown, and sort of an intermingling now, I guess, of the rosters to sort of freshen things up on both particular shows. So if you look at how both shows came out of this, watching Monday Night Raw this week and seeing the talent that was going into that roster, you were inclined to believe that maybe SmackDown was getting fleeced. I mean, they were just taking everybody out of the SmackDown roster and moving them to the Red brand on Monday and sort of leaving SmackDown with nothing. The Miz went to Raw. Maurice went to Raw. Dean Ambrose, who's the current Intercontinental Champion, went to Raw. Bray Wyatt, former WWE Champion, was going to Raw. Then on the women's side, Alexa Bliss went to Raw. Mickie James went to Raw. You looked at it and you said, geez, man, who's going to be left on SmackDown? I mean, I know we got AJ Styles and everything, but who else? Oh, SmackDown didn't fare too badly. Kevin Owens, current United States Champion, goes to SmackDown. Sami Zayn goes to SmackDown. Charlotte goes to SmackDown. The New Day go to SmackDown. Rusev with Lana go to SmackDown. And while on name value, that may not seem so strong. I mean, you look at it. You look at who goes to Raw. You got some big names there. The Miz, Dean Ambrose, Bray Wyatt, Alexa Bliss. I mean, arguably you could say that the biggest name that went to SmackDown from Raw was Charlotte. I mean, Kevin Owens is a big-time player, but... And I love Kevin Owens. Don't take this as me insulting or knocking Kevin Owens. I love Kevin Owens. I'm just saying, when you look at Kevin Owens by himself compared to Ambrose and Wyatt and the Miz, it's like 3 for 1. And let's not forget what a huge Sami Zayn fan I am. However, if you take the name value out of this, I think what we wound up with was a situation similar to what we had in the draft, which is that Monday Night Raw has the name value, okay? They have the marquee talent. They have the people on their roster that you would instantly recognize as even the most casual wrestling fan. But the problem is they're top heavy like they were before. And so as a result, you have a ton of talent that the creative staff of Monday Night Raw does not know what to do with. They just have no clue. I feel bad, actually, for somebody like The Miz, who was on fire over on SmackDown Live. And you bring him to Monday Night Raw, and he sort of has already hit his ceiling. Let's not forget, who is the Universal Champion on Monday Night Raw? Brock Lesnar. Do you see The Miz capturing that championship from Brock Lesnar anytime soon? No. I don't. Not unless it's by some serious hook or by serious crook or a horse tranquilizer or something. The Miz on SmackDown, act like I could be a world champion. The Miz on Monday Night Raw sort of has a ceiling. And granted, there's plenty of great talent on Monday Night Raw. Sasha Banks is still there. Finn Balor's still there. This women's division with Alexa Bliss and Mickie James moving over should be pretty exciting. Their tag division with the Revival coming up should be pretty exciting. But if I look on paper at who I think is going to give me the better show week in and week out, the better wrestling matches week in and week out, the better overall programs week in and week out, I think it's going to be SmackDown. I mean, let's think for a second about who's on SmackDown. It's highly underrated. But think of some of the dream matches you can get out of the talent that's there. Kevin Owens is now there. Sami Zayn is now there. And while I would love to see Sami and Kevin take a break from each other just for a little bit, they're still on the same roster and can do great things. AJ Styles, as I mentioned before, is there. Shinsuke Nakamura is there. John Cena is still there whenever he comes back from doing whatever it is that he's going to be doing in the coming months. And look, for all we knock John Cena, or for all some people knock John Cena all too frequently, please tell me the last time you felt gypped by John Cena against somebody in a big-time match. I know it was against Kevin Owens. I know it was against AJ Styles. So just think of it. John Cena and Shinsuke Nakamura. More John Cena, Kevin Owens. AJ Styles, Kevin Owens. AJ Styles, Nakamura. And let's not forget, Randy Orton is still on that roster as the champion. Let's not forget, Dolph Ziggler is on that roster. Let's not forget, Baron Corbin is on that roster. I like the way that SmackDown shakes out following this shakeup. I think the women's division is dealt a little bit of a blow, losing both Alexa Bliss and Mickie James, but I think there's also a much more clear direction now in the women's division with Charlotte coming over. Naomi is there as your champion. Lana is going to be entering into the fold. Becky Lynch is still there. Now, things are starting to sort out a little bit in the SmackDown women's division, where before it felt a little too crowded and indecisive. I still am not sure what's going to happen on Raw as far as the women's division. Bayley's your champ. Sasha's a tweener who desperately is in need of a heel turn to become her best self. And we'll see. I think the tag team division on SmackDown may need some work. The Vaudevillains, they're out of the mix with Simon Gotch now getting released. The New Day comes over there, so that rejuvenates some things a little bit. Nobody cares about the Shining Stars, so that's not really a big deal. But I'd like to see something more than the New Day, the Usos, and American Alpha, sort of in a round robin that plagued the Raw women's division for months. Get Breezango in there, up and running. I mean, you lost Slater and Rhino, but there's some upside there. After seeing the Superstars shake up, it is without question for me that right now, SmackDown is the show that you're going to want to watch. SmackDown is the show that you're going to want to tune in regularly to. We talk all the time about how there's just too much programming to sort through for a wrestling fan without becoming burnt out. And I think if you had to pick one, SmackDown would be the show that I want to watch. Because I think that the talent that will make up the main event level is more exciting for me to watch than what I'm going to get on Raw. You know what you're going to get on Raw? You're going to get Roman Reigns. You're going to get Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar's an attraction. I love him. I'll watch him all the time. But we already know the divided nature of Roman Reigns. And if you're not a Roman Reigns fan, you got options now. If you know that Roman Reigns is the main event of Monday Night Raw, and you don't like that, don't watch now. You have options. Because you have Sami Zayn, who I guarantee you by the end of a year will be a main eventer. You have Kevin Owens, who I guarantee you by the end of the year will be wearing the WWE Championship. You have AJ Styles. You have Shinsuke Nakamura. It's exciting. And this is coming from somebody who was never a huge SmackDown fan, but is now sort of coming into my own as a SmackDown fan with the way this roster is shaping up to be. If you're a fan of what was going on down in NXT, SmackDown is the show for you. If you're sort of a fan of what the WWE slash WWF used to be, then maybe Monday Night Raw is for you. But for me, SmackDown feels much like the future and where wrestling is going than Monday Night Raw does. SmackDown is built much more on character and on story and on emotion. Monday Night Raw is slogging in-ring promos and just a 3-hour uneven show that can oftentimes just be a mess. Just a sloppy mess. My money is on SmackDown right now. And I realize that the names that switched, the larger names shifted from SmackDown to Raw. But let's not forget, that's what happened after the draft, as I said not too long ago. SmackDown is the island of misfit toys. It is the show that is filled with people that nobody else knew what to do with, particularly those on Monday Night Raw. They didn't know what to do with these people, and now they're sent to SmackDown to be rehabbed. They're sent there in order to boost their value and repackage and rebrand and rebuild them. Jinder Mahal will be over on SmackDown soon enough. Don't be surprised if the Shining Stars somehow get over on SmackDown. Rusev will be a main eventer on SmackDown. These are all people that were damaged with their involvement of Monday Night Raw, and they will be rebuilt in spectacular fashion on SmackDown. And then next year, they'll probably move up to Raw after they've been rehabilitated. And they'll be ruined by people who just don't know what to do with them. Like I expect to see from The Miz and Slater and Rhino and probably even Alexa Bliss. I don't say it because I dislike them. I'm big fans of all of them. I just think that they were better served to maximize their talents and their abilities on SmackDown. And I think that's how this shakedown or shake up will wind up shaking down. Does that make sense? I think so. So with that said, look, I'm going to send you on your way. I want to thank you for coming and joining with me here and talking some wrestling. My thanks to Tom Nix for enlightening us on some of the other wrestling out there outside of the WWE landscape. Make sure you check out your homework that he gave you. So Evolve, also Keith Lee, check out a lot of that. I think you'll be really excited by expanding your wrestling horizons. Make sure you follow me on Twitter as well, @InfamousKid. That's KIDD, 2 Ds at the end. So @InfamousKid. You can also follow my Facebook page, facebook.com/BillyTheKid. And look, we'll be back next week. We'll be talking more wrestling. And we'll be, once again, not just breaking down shows, but really thinking about wrestling and talking about it on a cerebral level. Making your brain work. Why? This is intelligent wrestling conversation. I've been your host, Billy Donnelly. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you back here next week. Peace. Intelligent Wrestling Conversation has been a podcast presentation of This Is Infamous.